Now then, everybody, happy Sunday. See you Sunday. I'm going to make sure I make a video related to Christianity. So I'll be going with this old video from Metatron about the Shroud of Turin. If you want to watch this without me talking, the link will be in the description. So let's get into it.
X-ray evidence that a lot of people are claiming that it basically proves that the Shroud of Turin is 2,000 years old. What is this evidence? What is it all about?
Well, it's called wide-angle X-ray scattering. And what it does is it measures the amount of natural aging that is found in fibers, in fibers of other linen and other pieces of fabric. When you look at fibers microscopically, they look like a bundle of spaghetti. I have this example. The gentleman
Pasta.
Liberato De Caro, who is with the Italian Institute.
So I'll just add in there as well. I don't know much about the Shroud of Turin. I know what it is, obviously, but I've never paid much attention. I was always very skeptical about Christianity before recently, very recently, just last year, coming to Christ. So, this is why I want to delve into some of the more, I don't know, recent debates or, evidence around some of these, popular debates within Christianity.
Pasta.
And Liberato De Caro, who is with the Italian Institute for Crystallography, he's the one who published this in a peer-reviewed journal and his research using all this. And
of course,
so he
it's
described when you look at fibers under the microscope, they look like a bundle of spaghetti. But over the course of time, there are natural breaks that occur in these fibers. So if you can imagine, if you drop it, these are going to break. You can break off a bundle just like this right here. Bundle just like So by measuring the amount of breaks that you see in these fibers, you can get a good estimate as to how old something is. And so what he did, they had about a dozen pieces of linen of a known age, either from the historical context or that they were carbon dated. And so they knew exactly how old these other fabrics were. And they measured the amount of natural aging in all these other fabrics and so that they could get a plot line. And then they compared the amount of natural aging in fibers from the shroud. And the best piece of linen, if you will.
Okay, it's a sort of comparative analysis. Interesting.
That compared, it was taken from Masada, which is circa mid-first century. And so this was and so what he said is that there's just not nearly enough aging, or should I say there's far more aging evident in fibers from the shroud than for it to be only 700 years old, as the carbon dating labs would say.
Okay, so what are some of the reasons to actually be skeptical of these new findings? I mean, we're calling them new and everyone's sort of talking about, this as a sort of new scientific find. As we know now, it's at least a couple years old, the research is. And so, but what are some reasons to be skeptical of this new evidence?
I would say I don't have much contribute on the also of validity of this scientific procedure at the minute. It's not something I know a lot about, so I suppose I'll just keep it plain for that while trying to give some more analysis, maybe when I gather some more thoughts as we progress through the video.
Appreciate the host's question in this case. That is a very good question because, of course, the expert has now exemplified, has told us this is what it is, this is how it works, and this is what we're examining. It's a comparative analysis method, and it seems like that the shroud's aging of the fiber is too extensive for something to be 700 years old in the sense of being, therefore, a medieval forgery. So that was interesting, but let's see how we respond to this because this is a very pertinent question.
Well, I would say that, people would be skeptical because this is not a technique that is usually associated with dating artifacts. The issue, I guess, I applaud researchers for trying to find interesting and creative ways, especially when there's no attempt to carbon date it. I mean, if the carbon date's wrong, as many people feel, well, why haven't we done another carbon date?
Of course, he's referring to the 1988 carbon dating, the one that actually placed the shroud, although should I say the parts of the shroud that were examined were placed to the medieval period. And I do agree. I think they should do it again. I mean, if the Archdiocese of Turin or in general the Catholic Church would allow us to do it again, I think it would be great because this is 1988. Therefore, obviously, 1988's technology was used, and I think it would be great to use carbon dating again, but this time in 2024.
And it's,
Yeah, I agree there as well. I see no, I see no logical reason that we can't just do it again and gain further clarity. Why just do the experiment once? And I know that it is valuable, prestigious artifact, but it is still less. I'm sure quite a large piece of fabric from what I've seen in the past. So I'm sure taking such a minuscule amount to be able to carbon date it again wouldn't be an issue. I would hope not anyway. And this doesn't help, I think, when people are sort of skeptical about religion when it behaves squirrely like this. But anyway, continue for now.
And that's a question for the Turin authorities to answer. But if you're going to try to get another method of dating other than carbon dating, then it's going to have to be techniques like these. So in other words, what we did here, or what they did, was to compare the amount of natural aging in these other cloths, and then compare it with other pieces of cloth from a known age that we've carbon dated, or we know the age from its historical context. So then you apply that same technique to fibers from the shroud, and you look at, well, what best fits the amount of natural aging that we see in fibers from the shroud, and that appears to be a cloth that they found in first century Masada.
Okay, so now he's going into the explanation. He's kind of deflecting the question in this case. So he's once again explaining to us why or how the method worked. Great, but perhaps before doing that, we should also underline the fact that I personally don't think that the method in question is as definitive as, for example, perhaps a new carbon dating from several different parts of the shroud would be. And the reason why I'm saying that is because even though this method shouldn't be dismissed, because it does present very interesting findings that do point to the possibility of the shroud, in fact, being 2,000 years old instead of 700, it is also important to underline that this method is also dependent on the conditions of the shroud. The way it was stored may have an effect. For what I could see, I'm not an expert, of course, but I did look into it a little bit before filming this video, and it seems like it's not like a definitive method, because there are some elements that could interfere with it. And since usually that's something that is presented or brought forth whenever people try to distance themselves or attack the 1988 carbon dating finding, the possibility of contamination, which I will dive into today, then it is only fair to underline the fact that there are also some possibilities of altering elements with this new type of method that was used on the shroud, some of which being storage, temperature, humidity levels, and such.
None of these are...
Okay, I mean, Metatron's giving far more analysis than I ever could. I mean, I'm not... I know some things about history, but almost nothing about Christian history, so don't know 100% if I can contribute on that level. But I will just say, just as somebody who is new to Christ recently, that I do find maybe sometimes some of these topics we get wrapped up in are sort of less important than some of the other parts of the theological or historical underpinnings of Christianity. Whether the shroud is real or not, I suppose, is immaterial. I mean, if, for instance, it was proved that this shroud was, beyond shadow of a doubt, only 600 years old or whatever, not the actual one used Christ, I still would not, it wouldn't affect my faith in any way, shape or form from the method by which I came to Christ, because it was an experience between me and God. Came close to God and discovered that Jesus was the vector by which we effectively communicate with God. No matter what would happen with this experiment, I still wouldn't change my religion at all, or faith. I wouldn't be able to backpedal and get that God and Christ are the true way. Anyway, we'll just continue anyway, see what else we can glean from this.
Guarantees.
Okay.
In other words, this is just a very interesting way to say,
Okay, I appreciate what he said, and I want to connect it to something. Look at the title of some of these articles. Holy Shrouds of Turin authenticity can no longer be disputed. Over-exaggerated. Still, the findings are absolutely fascinating, and they do seem to point to the authenticity of the shroud, at least when it comes to this period dating. So, a very good point on the expert here.
Maybe something went awry with the carbon date, as many people do believe. The Professor Giulio Fanti, he published in 2013 something similar to this, although he was using spectroscopy and mechanical analysis to compare the amount of deterioration in fibers from other fibers, and by comparison, again using a similar methodology, he assigned a date range of 280 BC to 220 AD.
So Fanti is absolutely one of the experts that you will run into if you begin a research journey into not only the historical aspects of the shroud, but also its authenticity and all the different exams and tests that have been performed on it. Because remember that in the 70s, a massive team of scientists spent over 100 hours, maybe it was 150, it's been a year. Anyways, an enormous amount of time working on it, studying it. And of course, Fanti is an Italian. I actually watched several videos from him in Italian, and sometimes he was very interesting and he's absolutely very proficient, but other times he did seem to be very invested in it. So when it comes to Fanti's research, after watching all of his interviews, I have come to the conclusion that to me, they are mid-range for neutrality, mid-range. So not completely horrible, like some people say, but not like, oh, this is the new gospel of Jesus Christ. In terms of level of, like, I consider it like credible, but it kind of depends.
500-year range.
No, yeah, I mean, I've never heard of that person. So, be interesting. I imagine if I do intend to delve more into this topic, that we hear his name coming up more. I mean, if you're watching this at this point, want me to react to some more videos on the Shroud of Turin, let me know and we'll have a look.
With first century right in the middle. And so all these do is suggest, that maybe there's something wrong with carbon dating and maybe we need to be looking at this again.
We're going to talk about carbon dating a little bit more in just a minute, but
Good.
I want to move now to a question. How does this new finding, like this new scientific data, how does it fit with the other things that we know about the Shroud?
The interesting thing about the Shroud is that you have two bodies of scientific research. You have a massive amount of data that was collected in 1978 when you had a team of 33 American scientists go to Turin. They have access to the cloth for 5 days, working in shifts around the clock, 120 hours, and they bring 10 tons of gear with them. And so they collect tons of data. And from this data, they were able to determine that the Shroud is not the work of an artist. And that's really significant. In other words,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just before Metatron, I will say that is an important aspect to come out of that study, I suppose. In fact, it's not just maybe some facsimile or forged example of an historical artifact. Is still that historical, whether it is technically the Shroud of Turin or garment used for Christ's burial or not. It's interesting.
I actually mentioned this in my documentary, so I will kind of refer you to that. But already, if you think that the Shroud's image was created by painting, there is absolutely no way that that's the case. No paint pigments, no paint carrying mediums on the image bearing linen fibers. Also no brush stroke, no directionality, such as that which would result of mediums such as brushes.
In other words, here you have this inexplicable image of this 5'10" bearded crucified man, and the juxtaposition is it either is or it isn't. And if it's not authentic, then it must be the work of human effort. It must be the work of an artist somehow, some way.
Right.
And yet there are no artistic substances on the cloth to account for the image. And then you have a whole pattern of bloodstains which correlate with the wounds of crucifixion.
Of course, that could have been done on purpose because clearly, we don't know how. And in fact, that is one of the reasons why the Shroud is so interesting, is because there is no, well, he's correct in stating that we know for a fact that it wasn't done through painting. We don't know how the image appeared, but the simple fact that the blood is correlating with the, for example, the lance of Longinus, the spear of Longinus, so the Roman legionary that pierced Christ's side, or the broken nose, the blood mixed with the so-called water, just like in the Gospels, all of this can point to two possible interpretations. Either this connects with the description in the Gospels because it's exactly how the crucified man died, or someone was very familiar with the Gospel and tried to recreate it.
As described in.
Very, very interesting. I mean, I'll leave my video here for now. I'll let you catch the later part of Metatron's video. That'll be in the description in my video. Obviously, because there's not a lot I can really add other than my sort of interpretation of Christianity onto this at the minute. But it's interesting to learn more. We can, react to some more videos. If you want to know in the future, let me know, and I'll next one.